Welcome back, Outlaws. Today we are working on our balcony. We're actually working on our balcony floor, or you could call it that we're working on the ceiling for the front porch, whatever one. Both of them are applicable in this case. Whenever we first began the project, we did not have plans immediately to put a balcony on this cabin, but along the way it did kind of make sense. We knew we wanted to put a roof on here anyways. And really, if you think about it, a balcony is just a roof that does not have quite the same pitch. We could have obviously, pitched the roof a few more degrees, and that would have made for a very nice roof instead of an actual floor. But you can just change that pitch a little bit, and now you have a really nice floor. And to do this right, obviously, you're going to need to make sure of a couple of things. First and foremost is that the pitch is right. So this is a floor that's going to last for hopefully decades and not just a few years. Obviously, this is a very expensive project, so we want to ensure that we are using good sound judgment. And part of doing so is to secure two things, basically. Number one, ensure that you have the proper pitch. And for a balcony like this, the floor needs to slope at about 1/4 inch per foot. And since this has a run of about 12 feet, that means that we need a drop from the point where we are nailed into our ledger, screwed into the ledger, to where the water sheds off at the end of about 3 inches. Now, our drop in this case is about 4 to 4.5 inches of drop. So we've actually added about an inch and a half, just to ensure that we actually have a good slope on there. It's not too aggressive. Again, you're not going to feel this if you are walking on it per se. Now, it could, you might feel it a little bit if the weather is really wet. If you're out there on the balcony whenever it's raining, for example, you might be aware that there's a little bit of a slide or a little bit of a slope to it at that point, especially since the water is hopefully running off very well. But it's not going to affect you when it comes to walking, at least. And that's the thing. Whenever you're walking or sitting or enjoying the balcony, is that you'll be able to do so. The next thing you need to be aware of, though, is the actual materials that you're wanting to use. So in this case here, we are using 23/32 plywood, and 23/32 plywood is a good size, a good thickness of plywood. But this is not just ordinary 23/32 plywood. Now this is severe weather, pressure treated, ground contact plywood. Now this is really good stuff, and guess what? It's expensive, and it's heavy. It's very heavy. It's very heavy, and it's very expensive. But once you get it, of course, you're going to be able to do your balcony project. The next thing is, how do we get this raised up into position so that we are able to get it onto our balcony? Again, this balcony is 10 feet high. All right, that's pretty high. And when you're trying to lift these sheets up, they weigh a lot. They are super heavy because they are wet. Whenever you buy them, they come wet. So you've got to get them into position. So Jonathan had the idea. He said, you know what, Dad? These things are heavy. I said, you know what, son? You're right. He said, hey, let's use our sheetrock lift that we use to put the sheetrock on the ceiling in the house that we're going to use at the cabin. Why don't we use that to raise it? And I was a little bit hesitant at first, thinking, I'm not too sure. I mean, these sheets are very heavy, and I did not know if the lift would be able to handle the additional weight, especially raise them up this high. But you know what? It did just fine. We had zero issues with it, other than a few sheets every now and again that wanted to tilt just a little bit whenever we did not have them perfectly centered. Obviously, you want to make sure that you do have the lift properly centered, that everything is level. I would recommend treating this as a 4-person job. You could squeeze by with 2 or 3 people if you absolutely had to. But in this case here, I would treat it as a 3 or 4-person job. The goal basically is to ensure that you have 1 to 2 people who are actually steadying the sheets of plywood, 1 person who is raising it, and then at least 1 person who is watching to ensure that nothing is getting off level too far or is going to strike or hit anything else. And that's basically what we did. We operated as a 4-person team for the most part. We raised these into position, and then we lifted them the rest of the way by hand. And once we had them into position, then of course we had to figure out about going through and actually get them onto the balcony itself once we had them on the lower roof. Now, if you don't have the advantage of having a lower roof, then obviously you have to figure out some alternative solutions there. I'm not going to even offer a whole lot of alternatives there, because I have to admit this is a challenge. This really is. These sheets, I cannot tell you enough. These sheets are heavy. But as you can see, once we get them into position, the next thing, of course, is to actually move them onto the balcony. So we have them on the lower roof, and now we got to get them onto the balcony, and then that means basically moving them one by one. And that's exactly what we did. We actually shifted them over one by one. Once we had the first course run, then it was necessary to go through and start the second course. You will need to rip one sheet in half and do so on every second course. Unless you start on your first course with a half sheet, then it's every first and third, every odd course. But otherwise every even course. Now we only had 3 courses that we had to run through here, so we only had to rip one sheet one time, and that supplied us with both the end pieces that we needed to be able to completely sheathe or deck this balcony. So here we're basically getting the first sheet. Got the first sheets basically right. We did that the first line, got those right, got those screwed down, and then we begin the process of moving the sheets over. And it's good to have a couple of helpers who are able to lift those sheets and move them over. Somebody on the receiving end, preferably, to get those. It's a little bit easier as you do move through the project, I will say, than it is whenever you first are starting. That first course is going to be your hardest course to get that done. Once you have the first course, though, then the rest of it does move a lot faster. Having a helper, who's able to come along and ensure that the boards are properly secured, it does help too. So we have a list up there doing that, and then of course, we're going through and moving all the rest of these, piece by piece and one by one. So just showing the video here of exactly what's going on there, and I'll show you some more here in just a second. We did run into a little bit of an issue whenever we were working on trying to get these centered just right, or I should say getting them lined up just right. It's hard whenever you are trying to stretch out and move those sheets over. Now obviously you can walk out or put yourself a little board to stand on, a plank. That's perfectly fine, but it works just fine if you can also have somebody below you with take it like a 2x4 and just kind of like gently push against one side of it to kind of get the piece of plywood where it needs to go. So you can see us here. We're working through the project, the process, anyways, of ensuring that the boards are in proper alignment. So we have 3 heads there. You see all 3 of us there basically working, trying to get that done. You do need to ensure that you do put a little bit of a gap around the plywood. This is important to ensure that the plywood, if it does get exposed to moisture, has the ability to expand and contract. The plywood is going to shrink, as it dries. That's another thing to be aware of as well. The plywood is going to shrink as it dries, and as it does so, then it's going to, of course, open up a little bit of a gap, too. So bear that in mind also. But it could potentially swell, too, and that's important as well, because if it swells too much, then it could potentially buckle, and then now you've got, of course, a little bit of a rise occurring in that area. That could potentially open it up to additional water intrusion. So let's just be aware of that too. So anyways, we went through, ensured that we had proper spacing, ensured that we were breaking on our joists where they needed to go, and then basically secured each one of these sheets. Now, if there was a space or a place that we did not actually land on a joist, and that sometimes does happen, then what you can do is you can go through and add a joist if you need to. That's completely possible too. You could rip the sheet as well to get it to the right size so that it does break, and then you have to use a different sheet. Obviously, I'll leave that up to you as to exactly what solution that you choose to apply. For us, I went ahead and just added 2 2x10s back into the project to help reinforce the areas where we actually did not break on a joist. So we did that instead. It does add a little bit extra, cost as far as that goes, but you're going to end up paying for it one way or the other if things are not spaced exactly right. That's either with a couple extra 2x10s, or you're going to have to pay for it with an extra sheet or 2 of this plywood. And this plywood, again, it is not cheap, folks. So keep that in mind. The 2x10s actually come out cheaper to get a couple of those, and just basically put those into position where they need to go, and then screw them down and secure them, and that's a very easy way of actually adding a little bit extra joist support, but at the same time ensuring that you do have proper walk support too for the plywood where it needs to go. So that's basically it for today. The project wrapped up very smoothly. We didn't have really much in the way of issues with it, other than just getting these sheets into place. They were very, 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 very heavy. So stay tuned next time, because what we will be working on soon is actually finishing this floor. We will be working through the project of going through and trying to get the floor completely sealed so that it does not have any water penetration at all, because that is the goal. 0 water penetration, because we're going to be sitting under this roof, under this floor, whenever we're enjoying the front porch below, and of course walking on it whenever we are enjoying the balcony up above. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.